I want to tell a story about Millennium Eve. Now, old people, if you ask them where they were when JFK died, most people could tell you. Or if you ask them where they were when they heard about Armstrong landing on the moon, again, most of them can tell you. I think for us, younger ones, maybe we could think of what happened. I know exactly where I was on 9/11, and I know exactly where I was on Millennium Eve. Most of you can probably imagine that as well, can't you? Where were you? No, you don't. Simon?
I was in Bagman, London.
Duncan?
My parents' house.
Exciting New Year's Eve?
I was in Frankfurt.
Right. So anyway, this was me. I had a very exciting job. At the time I was working for Bob Geldof, and he had his own hospitality company, and he'd organised, and it was very secretive. He wanted to keep it below the radar. Thankfully, so much was taking place that the press didn't really hear about it, and it was a party, a massive, impressive, high-profile celebrity shindig at the London Aquarium. And they split it all up, and there were these different stages in the London Aquarium for bands to play with, fish swimming around. It was quite surreal, and we put lots of spade work into preparing this extravaganza, if you like. And there was a list of those who were invited. And it was crystal clear for us on hospitality that only those who are on the list could come. Some that are on the list that you'd all be familiar with. There was Madonna, there was Blur, there was the Happy Mondays. Now, I don't know if any of you like the Happy Mondays, but my sister was an avid fan. And when she heard that the Happy Mondays were playing, she begged me, said, please, Simon, can you just wangle me a ticket? Can you somehow get me? I'll help you out. And so I managed, actually, to get her a job as kind of my lackey. And she was so excited. For months she'd been looking forward to it. And so here we were, New Year's Eve, Millennium Eve, on the brink of a whole new millennium, and the celebs started coming. John McEnroe goes past, Viv Richards, sporting guys, politicians, everything. It was, I'm not overly celebrity obsessed, but it was kind of exciting. And my sister was quaffing away the free champagne there, and she wasn't hammered, but she was getting seriously lightheaded. It was 11:30. Now, we had our clear instructions that at 5:02, the doors would shut, you'd go in, and you would just let rip with the other guests. It was either 5:02 or it was when the last guest arrived. And so just about everyone had arrived. There was one person to arrive. It was 10 to midnight. We had 5 minutes left, and this one, I forget who they were, hadn't yet arrived. And my sister, she needed another packet of fags. And she said, Simon, I'm just going to run. There's a kiosk about 500 yards away. I'll run and I'll be back in a tick. I said, look, it's only fags. Come on, there'll be some inside. And she was desperate. She legged it off there. And Murphy's Law kicked in. As soon as she went, that last person arrived. And I tried to stall. It was around the corner. I couldn't see my sister. I was trying to stall, but the rules were the rules. And 5:02, the door was shut. And I surrendered my mobile phone. We all had to give our mobile phones. They didn't want any outsiders, hello, whatever, coming along. And I went in there, and by the time I got in, everyone was letting it rip. And I looked out the window, and you can remember the scenes. There was this incredible fireworks display. There was the London Eye going around. It was beautiful, it was stunning. Random people, some quite well known, started sort of slobbering all over me in their drunken state. It was wild, it was a great party, it was a celebration of a life with all these beautiful people. And I got caught up in it for a few minutes, and then I looked down, and I could see in the road, 2 stories below me, I could see Rebecca pleading with the 2 burly bouncers on the door, pleading. And then they were saying no, they're being polite, they're being firm. And then she started getting angry, and she was clawing past them, and they started being much more firm. And then eventually, she wouldn't take no for an answer. They pushed her on the floor. And she fell back there, tears streaming from her face, mascara all over the place. A picture of rage, anger, brokenness, disappointment, crushing agony. And that's kind of a picture of what we're looking at now.
The Christ is saving the criminal. The Christ saves the criminal. Okay, the Christ saves the criminal. Let me try and illustrate how this works. In the 17th century, In the English Civil War, England was being ripped apart. And Oliver Cromwell's Roundhead army was fighting its battles up and down the country against the Cavaliers. A soldier from Oliver Cromwell's army deserted, and he ran away. A few days later, they caught that man, and the soldiers dragged him back to the barracks, and they threw him into a prison cell, and they shut the door, and they said, "You're going to face Oliver Cromwell himself." He waits there nervously, and nervously, and nervously, and eventually he is dragged before the highest authority in the land, Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protector, and the man doesn't take any time at all. He says, "Son, you deserted England in her greatest hour of need, and you will die by firing squad when the evening curfew bell sounds tonight." And they take the guy away to sit out his last few hours in the cell. Eventually, the sun's getting low in the sky. I mean, the shadows are lengthening. He can just catch the light of his last few hours through the prison window, and he hears the scrape of the bolt in the cell door, and it creaks open, and the soldiers are standing there. And they say, "Let's go." And they lead this guy out on his last walk, out into the courtyard, into the evening sunshine. They line him up, they turn him round, back against the wall. They put a blindfold on his eyes so it all goes dark. And he hears the soldiers take 10 paces away from him and turn around. He hears them pull out their guns, he hears the gunpowder go into the chamber, he hears the click as they cock it into place, and he hears the sergeant major give the order to put the rifle to their shoulders. And then he takes his last breath. And they're all waiting for the evening curfew bell. And then he takes another breath. And there's no bell. He takes another breath. No bell. A whole minute passes. No bell. What's going on? He hears the sergeant major talk to one of his soldiers. Muttered conversation. He hears running footsteps. He hears footsteps in the tower of the belfry. Someone's running up the belfry to see why there's no bell. What's going to happen? Do you know what they found at the top of the belfry? There's a woman, a young woman, and she's clinging to the clapper of the bell. You know the clapper of the bell? You've got the big shell of the bell, and the clapper's the thing in the middle that makes the sound as it swings to and fro. This woman is clinging to it, surrounding it with her body, and every time the evening bell tried to strike, her body was in the way. And the soldiers, they prise her off this clapper, and her hands are frozen into place, and they're bleeding, and her body has been smashed up and broken, and she's as white as a sheet, gasping for air. And they carry her downstairs to Oliver Cromwell. And she stands in front of him. He looks at her, and he says, "Young woman, what are you doing?" She's taking shuddering breaths, but she says, "Sir, that man out there is my fiancé, and I can't bear to see him die." And Oliver Cromwell is so moved by it that he says, "Young lady, because of your sacrifice, he'll go free. Let the criminal go free, and there'll be no evening curfew tonight." See, the Christ saves the criminal.